You know, it doesn't matter how much we talk about the accomplishments of martial arts master Bruce Lee, the late great martial arts master Bruce Lee. We're still going to have haters, detractors, people who are going to say that he was just an actor and he was average as a martial artist and he was not even close to being as good as some of the great martial artists during his time, at least according to what Steven Seagal said as one. And several others have said similar things. Bruce Lee was not a real fighter. Be that as it may, the world doesn't see it that way. He is still by far the most celebrated martial artist of our time. It's in the books. It's well documented. I just wanted to take a moment to touch on some of the things, some of the accomplishments Bruce Lee made during his short life here on planet Earth. And this will be received very well by those who loved Bruce Lee and who respected him for his accomplishments in the martial arts. Let me say this as I'm speaking to you today, right now, all of the new age martial artists that are out here now, especially those in the mixed martial arts, there's a handful that give Bruce Lee and have given Bruce Lee his proper respect and due, his just due. And there's a new group of individuals who try to denigrate the man and try to lessen his accomplishments. Oftentimes, that's their ego speaking, maybe pride, and a lack of real understanding. You see, they're not old school. They didn't come up during the time that Bruce Lee was living. We, older generation of martial artists, know. We really know. But anyway, here are some of the things that Bruce Lee did to change the world of martial arts. One, he broke down the wall of division between Asia and America. Once upon a time, the Chinese were ridiculed, especially them, Asians in general, and talked about as being uh, old slant eyes and yellow man and chop sake, things like this that were said to them to put them down as if they were less even than black men were during those periods of times of segregation. The Asians were treated maybe not as bad as black folks or so-called African Americans, but they were treated bad by white Americans or America during those times. America had a disdain for Asia for some reason. But when Bruce Lee came onto the scene, an actor, a martial artist, and even combined, his presence on the screen had an electricity to it. It had an, an energy that could not be denied. He had such a screen presence. Once his talent, his skill, his personality, his character, his charisma touched American soil and airwaves, and people got a taste of him, their eyes opened, and they realized that there's something outside of America that is appealing, it's intriguing, and it happens to be in the form of a man named Bruce Lee, Lee Sao Lung, Jun Fan. He impacted people in America and eventually throughout the world as an upcoming star. And he became that star, even though his light was dimmed in a very short period of time. But because of his appeal to the masses, the division that was there before between China and America caused it to be open. The floodgates opened, and we began to see more and more martial arts masters and instructors from Asia proliferate our country, opening up dojos and dojangs and kwons, training centers and halls. All Asians were beginning to receive the respect that they never had from America, all because of Bruce Lee. Now, you can not like what I said, but it's the truth anyway. But he is the reason that there are martial arts schools all over the world today. You don't have to accept what I just said, but it is the truth. If it's not, tell me why we have martial arts schools in virtually every state, every city across this world and country. It was not that way before Bruce Lee. Next, he defied Chinese tradition by teaching also non-Asians. Bruce Lee taught whites and eventually married a white lady or woman, Linda Lee Cadwell at the time. Emery, that was her name, is Cadwell now, as far as I can still remember. And she became Linda Lee. So he married someone outside of his so-called race. He taught white students, the celebrity type, Dean Martin, Steve McQueen, James Coburn. And he taught black students as well, Jesse Glover being his first black student, and eventually Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, NBA basketball star, and others. He did not discriminate because he felt like everyone should be afforded the opportunity to learn martial arts, irrespective of your ethnic origin. Now, we all are familiar with the Nunchakus. Some call them the Nunchucks or the Numchucks. That is an Okinawan weapon. Two equal sticks connected by a chain or cord, originally by horsehair. Bruce Lee took that Okinawan weapon that was taught to him by one of his students, Dan Inosanto, and he popularized it across the world. He took what Dan showed him and he perfected it for himself. And everyone wanted to make a pair of nunchakus if you couldn't afford one at the time. And then eventually people began to buy them and they began to be mass produced across the planet. And you saw Bruce Lee lookalikes in movies and your friends in the neighborhood where you lived at with nunchakus trying to mimic Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon, from China's Connection, from Return of the Dragon, and so forth. He made the nunchakus popular. Outside of that, we probably would have never, ever seen them showcased in so many films, hanging on so many dojo walls, being performed in many katas in karate or martial arts tournaments, all because of Bruce Lee. And he also popularized the mixing of the principles of fighting from various other martial arts systems outside of just your traditional system or style that you studied as an individual. He made that popular. Was he liked for this or loved for this? Absolutely not. Not by the traditionalists. Bruce Lee defied tradition because he felt like everyone had something to offer in their style and or system. And he borrowed from those arts that he studied, to include French savate, to include fencing, American fencing, to include Thai boxing, jiu-jitsu, various forms of kung fu, to include, of course, what he learned from Yet Man Wing Chun, and even American boxing. He loved Muhammad Ali. He combined these things, and he also, as a result, garnered some hate from traditional martial artists because they didn't feel like you should put anything together. I think really it was a form of jealousy. They were afraid to leave their comfort zone, many of them. But now we have what is called mixed martial artists, the UFC, and so forth. But guess what? Bruce Lee began that. He was a true mixed martial artist. And if the truth be told, when the UFC became popular initially, these guys who were doing so-called mixed martial artists, they only represented one art. So they were not mixed martial artists themselves. You would have, for example, a jiu-jitsu guy, just jiu-jitsu, versus a Muay Thai guy, just Muay Thai. So what's the mixed martial arts? The fact that you had two separate arts pitted against one another, as opposed to two separate individuals who have studied several arts. Bruce Lee studied several arts, and he synthesized those arts into his own system that he called Jeet Kune Do. Bruce Lee single-handedly made the Asian martial arts popular across the planet. Had it not been for Bruce Lee, and this is the part that I don't get, you get Asian martial artists, especially Korean and Japanese, that have talked down on Bruce Lee's skill, that said that he was nothing more than an actor and that he was not that good of a martial artist. These same guys, and even women. But the sad part is, had it not been for Bruce Lee, they would have never been able to come to America and open a martial arts school, a taekwondo school, a kuk sool won school, a hapkido school, a kung fu school, Hung Gar, or Shaolin Kung Fu, or Muay Thai school, or whatever. They would not even have that opportunity had it not been for Bruce Lee, a Chinese, an Asian, who came here and paved the way for all Asians to teach their particular system, style, or craft. All because of Bruce Lee. There are a lot of people who don't want to give Bruce Lee his just credit, his due credit. But he is the one that is the poster child for what we now know as martial arts across the planet. Now, if he is not that individual, I said that individual, then who is? Tell not just me, I don't really want to know because I already know that he is. Tell the world behind what I'm saying right now, if Bruce Lee is not responsible for what I just said, making martial arts popular across the planet, whether you want to call him an actor or not, if he's not responsible for making martial arts popular across the planet, you tell me who is. Hands down, it's Bruce Lee. So, like it, love it, don't love it. It's the truth anyway. Now, it could have been someone else. Could have been another name. Could have been another ethnic group responsible for martial arts and its notoriety on this planet. But it just so happens that it was Jun Fan, the man that we know as the Little Dragon, Lee Shaolin, Bruce Lee. May he continue to rest in peace. May those of you individuals that have studied Jeet Kune Do principles and concepts, and even traditional Jeet Kune Do under him, who may still be living, long live the legacy of Bruce Lee. He will never be forgotten, at least by those who know the truth. Brother Teacher out. So long.